Hello, my name's Justin Harrison. I'm the Performance Testing Services Manager at Vision Point Systems. I began working for VPS in 2013 as a senior software engineer and began performance testing Appian applications in 2014, and I've been doing it ever since. VPS has been tasked with performance testing Appian's largest deployments. I've also worked as an Appian designer, which has helped me understand design decisions and how they impact performance. Currently, my team consists of 10 people who specialize in performance testing Appian applications. Those folks also dedicate time to innovation in the performance testing sphere through internal R&D. Over the years, VPS has pioneered the current methodologies for performance testing in the Appian sphere, and we continue to innovate and develop new tools and accelerators as we look towards the future. With me is Christine Hutchison, a specialist leader at Deloitte, and we're going to discuss how performance testing impacts programs and drives success through our partnership.
Hi, Justin. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Christine Hutchison, and I'm a specialist leader at Deloitte. I've been working with Appian since 2009, and before that, I performed custom development and did a lot of database support. So a lot of that previous experience helps support the Appian work that I do today. I'm a practice lead of Appian at Deloitte, and over the years, I've worked with Justin for many, many occasions. We've worked together in customers, we've worked together in initiatives for Appian, and we work together just within the community supporting each other. So it truly is my pleasure to be here with you today, Justin. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for being here, Christine. What motivated Deloitte to partner with VPS to provide performance testing services to their clients initially?
So we reached out to Vision Point Systems because we know about the experience that you and your team bring to performance testing. As you mentioned in your introduction, you have hands-on experience as well. That additional insight into how Appian works really helps elevate the level of performance testing that Vision Point Systems brings to customers. Your maturity in the marketplace, your recognition, and even your client understanding. You've done this before. You've helped customers be successful. We see that, we appreciate that, and we know our customers do as well.
Thanks, Christine. Do you see clients ask for performance testing to be part of a project or program, or is it something that you suggest to them? And if it's suggested to them, how do you convince them that it's worth the investment?
So that's a really good question, and a loaded question at that. I think a lot of people start off with Appian projects, not necessarily programs. There are some exceptions to the rules, like in anything. But when you're starting off on an Appian project, it may be because you're trying to prove the software or prove how it fits within your architecture or within your culture. And so oftentimes these projects start off at a much smaller scale. And so in those situations, customers are not thinking about performance testing. Customers, of course, that are looking at programs or looking at larger critical implementations are thinking about performance testing. So it really almost just depends on where they are in their journey of Appian and how they're thinking of it. It is absolutely something that we always recommend to customers because Appian is such an integral part to the way people operate and do their work that it really needs to be as efficient as possible in order to get the most value from it. So when customers are looking at taking a project and elevating it to a program, they really need to start thinking about how an enterprise platform reacts. How is it going to react when you keep adding additional applications to that platform for different users, different functionalities, different pulls on data? So getting that big picture of how things are going to fit together is critical to anybody's success. And we find that the earlier you start in the project or in the process of implementing and bringing Appian into your ecosystem or your architecture, the much more successful you'll be if you're looking at performance testing from the beginning.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I find with clients we engage with and we look to market to, it seems to be they're either all in for performance testing or all against performance testing. I haven't found a bunch of middle ground. But one thing I have found in my experience is in order for your program to be successful, each of your projects need to be successful. And that's one of the reasons that it's important to performance test your projects as opposed to waiting until you've implemented a program. And you mentioned something that leads into another question I had for you. In what phase of the software development life cycle do you see clients making performance testing part of their delivery? And what are some of the pros and cons to each of the periods in the life cycle, and where do you think it has the most impact?
So that's another very good loaded question. Customers who are thinking about performance testing early and often will look to make it as an integral part of their software development lifecycle. As you know from your hands-on experience, Appian lends itself to be very agile and helps support agile project delivery. So you can move in distinct increments, you can move very quickly, and you can move these things forward. So you can get ahead of the game very quickly. So customers that are thinking larger scale program are looking to make it a part of that agile cycle. Test as you go. Give your development team or your configuration team as much runway as possible to react to any possible changes, improvements, or tuning that they need to do. But unfortunately, I will say more times than not, we will see customers start to do performance testing either at the end of the development cycle, and believe it or not, even after applications have gone to production. So while doing the testing is still helpful in both of those situations, you lose some of the benefits that you get when you're testing early and often, right? And I'm sure you know from some of your experience, and give us some good examples of that. But when you're testing late after something has gone to production, you have to think about the impact of the cost, the impact of delays or potential downtime that might affect your system. So let's say it's not bringing the system down, but there are changes that have been identified. Do you still have that development team available? Do you need to spin up a new team? So there are those types of costs that you need to consider as well, right? And then in the middle ground, if you're testing towards the end of your development cycle before you go to production, have you given your team enough time to react to any major changes or needs that have been identified? And if not, is that going to delay your rollouts? So what does that do for your total cost of that project? How much faster or longer are you going to have to wait to recover some of those benefits and realize the benefits of Appian because you need to pull back and make changes to the application? Is that what you see too, Justin?
Yeah, I've seen it on both ends of the spectrum. I've seen late release performance testing being executed, and essentially I've seen folks get into positions in their project where in order to make the application performant, we begin discussing actually a complete redesign of data architecture. Getting in early in the software development lifecycle, making it part of your development process in the agile sprint cycle is the absolute best way to go about it. We're currently involved in a pretty large scale project, and right now we're in the software development lifecycle. So performance testing comes one sprint after development. During that sprint, not only are we performance testing, but the team is remediating, which is eliminating tech debt due to performance issues. And actually, we're 100% guaranteeing deploying fully performant software that's going to meet the user's needs and the end customer's SLAs and requirements for their application.
And that really helps when you can give that level of comfort to already nervous or sensitive customers that are looking to deploy value to their own customers or user base, right? Getting that one thing out of their mind that that's not what's going to be a blocker to acceptance of that software is really critical. And I hate to say the word easy. I always joke about there is no easy button for anything, right? But it is really one of the easier decisions to make. If you do this earlier, it really does help relieve some of your own stress and things like that.
And it becomes much more cost effective. As the team moves through with the development lifecycle, we're able to keep up with the new use cases, the new functionalities that are being developed and deployed. When we come in very late in the software lifecycle, then we end up doing a whole lot of work up front, very minimal time to understand your applications and how users are going to use that application. Because it's very important when you performance test to understand how the end users are going to use the application to complete their tasks. So we can model the architecture of the test after the expected traffic that we're going to see in production. What are the major benefits that you see your customers receiving when they include performance testing as part of their programs?
If I could lump them into three buckets, I would say the first is the user experience, without a doubt. Reducing that wait time, knowing that something is going to come up on a screen when they need to. The user is going to be able to find the information or present the information in the way that they need in a very efficient and timely manner. Which leads to my second bucket of user acceptance. Change is hard for everybody. And so when you're implementing a new system, you want to remove as many of those barriers or as many of those avenues of complaints that the users might be able to have. And if something is performing well, that is one less check that you can't, a box that you can't check actually when you're complaining about accepting a system or using a system, right? So you're removing that variable. And then ultimately, the biggest one is customer satisfaction. Whether the users of your system are your own internal users, those are your customers, right? Whether that application is exposed externally to your paying customers, there's your customer base. Or if your internal community is using the Appian application to support conversations, activities with external customers, like a call center, right? The faster you can present the information to continue the conversations, give the customers what they need in the right amount of time, and solve problems quickly, you're going to increase customer satisfaction. And at the end of the day, because of, as I mentioned, you have so many different potential types of customers, that is what it's all about. You want your users of the system to be happy. You want them to be able to use it efficiently. You want them to be able to want to use it because it makes their life easier. And that's the power of a tool like Appian, where you're bringing together people, process, data, and truly orchestrating intelligent automation to do things quickly, do things efficiently, and do things without error.
It's funny that you mentioned user experience because that's often talked about. And I think one of the things that end customers don't realize is the money they can save by making their employees more efficient by minimizing wait time on the application. A great example is if our average response time from your application is, say, double the industry standard, say it's 6 seconds instead of 3, and we have a 10-step use case, then total, that user is going to be waiting for the system to respond for 1 full minute, 60 seconds. Now, if that user does that 10 times a day, that's 600 seconds. Now, if you have 1,000 users who are going to do that in, 10 times a day, then suddenly those extra seconds start turning into hours where your employees are essentially idle waiting for the system to respond. So if we can cut your average response time down from 6 seconds to 3 seconds, we can almost essentially double the efficiency of your employees by simply mitigating wait time. And another side of the coin that many folks don't think about is the ability to save on the cost of hardware, right? I use a car analogy. If you build a lighter car, you don't need as much horsepower to make it go fast. And that's the same holds true in your software and in your environments. So if we can tune the application to be highly performant, we don't need to rely on as much hardware to back your application, which is going to translate into direct savings for the end customer. So we talked a little bit about the benefits that the customers are receiving. What benefits do you see that Deloitte is receiving from partnering with VPS to provide these performance testing services to your clients?
I mean, Other than the obvious that I get to work with Justin, yourself, and those on your team who have always been a pleasure, so knowledgeable, so personable, so easy to work with, right? Other than that benefit that I want to get out there is Vision Point Systems has been doing this for a long time. And I love the approach that you take to enabling your own performance testers, giving them hands-on experience of Appian so that they know what they're testing, what they should be able to accept, where they can try to push for the boundaries. That's a unique thing that not everybody does, right? Sometimes you hire testers and the testers do testing against baselines. You're not only doing that against the baselines, you have that deep industry knowledge, you have that customer experience, but you're bringing that other level of experience to Appian to it as well that really helps round it out. Your resources have always been able to hit the ground running, which is something as a program manager, a project manager, I deeply appreciate. You bring that knowledge of industry standards. What should be the starting points? Where should you be advising customers and giving them that insight? So you bringing that level of strategic thinking or larger marketplace thinking to a project always helps, right? Because there's more people in the room providing this kind of knowledge. There's more people in the room having these kinds of baseline understandings. And you've done this more times than most people, you and Vision Point Systems. So you know customers, you know the different nuances of customers, you know the different nuances of the implementations, whether it's cloud, whether it's on-premise, whether it's hybrid. You've done it all, you've seen it all. And that just can't be taught. That only comes through experience. And that your maturity in your programs, some of the levels that you put forward, is just something that I truly appreciate, Justin.
Thanks, Christine. We've actually been lucky enough with our performance testing team that the other resources that work within VPS, our Appian designers, our systems administrators, database folks, we've been really lucky that we do have a pretty broad depth of knowledge across the entire Appian spectrum. So even when the performance test team gets into kind of muddy waters where we haven't been before, we have folks who have 5 years experience as system administrators on-premise Appian installation. So we always have various resources within the company that can give us an assist. When we see something strange, then usually there's someone who has some sort of idea. And I've been really happy here because everyone is very happy to share their knowledge. And that's what allows us to have these resources, these employees that can hit the ground running. And the whole experience within Appian has been really great because I find that the community as a whole is a bit like that. And I really appreciate that fact about VPS and about the community, and especially about working with Deloitte. I've found that your teams have been very open with us. Your teams have been very friendly and very inviting. And that's not something you always find in the software industry.
Thank you, Justin.
And finally, I'd like to ask you one more question. We've been talking a lot about performance. We've been talking a lot about performance testing. What is the most important piece of advice that you would give regarding development of performant applications to other teams in the field, folks who may be watching this video?
It's hard to pick one thing, but I will say what always comes first is put the user first, right? What should they be waiting on versus what should they not be waiting on? You're not going to have just one user using your system at the whole time. So what can you remove chaining from? What can you make asynchronous versus synchronous so that things aren't waiting and you're reserving resources for other users of the system? Think about concurrency. Put that user first. And from a technical perspective, don't nest your CDTs. Put your data model first, normalize, and so forth.
Yeah, that backs up my number one piece of advice, and that's to pay attention to the data architecture during the design and planning phase. I think data architecture becomes very important as the backbone of your application. And original data design and data architecture can be the difference between views failing to respond and views being snappy and performant. And I think without that solid foundation, just like in every other software engineering project that's built from scratch, then you risk building on an unstable foundation. And as you scale, as you grow, as your project becomes a program, you're going to see more and more of kind of the weak points of your data architecture, which are going to lead to weak points in your applications and potentially failures in production due to failure to perform. So I'd really like to thank you, Christine, for joining us for this talk. I'm really glad you could make the time to be here with us. As always, have a great conversation with you. I look forward to many more. Please feel free to visit the Vision Point Systems booth. Feel free to reach out to me directly if anyone would have performance testing questions or would like to get some more information about applying performance testing to their program. Thanks again and enjoy the rest of Appian World and have a great day.